Most fans point to one-course meal when they talk about SpongeBob's darkest moment, and for good reason. It crossed a line, and people noticed. But what if I told you there's another episode, quieter, subtler, that's actually even more disturbing? It didn't need grotesque visuals or cartoon violence. Instead, it hit where most shows, especially children's shows, rarely dare to go: the quiet ache of depression, isolation, and suicidal thoughts. The episode, Are You Happy Now? And the truth is, many fans missed just how heavy it really was. On the surface, it's about Squidward not having a happiest memory. But underneath that setup is something deeper, sadder, and, depending on who you ask, maybe a little too real. This isn't just about tone, it's about the emotional weight that creeps up on you long after the credits roll. Stay with us, because we're diving into what might be SpongeBob's most psychologically intense episode ever, and why it still sparks debate more than a decade later. To understand how we got to an episode like Are You Happy Now?, you've got to look at the timeline. SpongeBob's golden era, roughly seasons 1 through 3, was defined by fast-paced humor, surreal gags, and lovable absurdity. It was the kind of comedy that felt timeless, where even the grumpy characters had warmth, and no moment ever got too heavy. But after the 2004 SpongeBob SquarePants movie, the show changed. Steven Hillenburg stepped back. New writers came in. The tone started drifting, slowly at first. Episodes began experimenting with edgier ideas, meaner humor, and sometimes an uncomfortable sense of emotional weight that didn't always sit right with fans. By the time we reached season 8, the shift was undeniable. The show had already pushed boundaries in episodes like The Splinter and A Pal for Gary. But then Are You Happy Now dropped, and instead of being loud or grotesque, it was sad, quiet, and unsettling in a way SpongeBob had never been before. This wasn't a visual gag gone too far, this was existential. Before we get into Are You Happy Now?, let's briefly revisit the episode that set the bar for dark in SpongeBob One-Course Meal. In it, Mr. Krabs learns that Plankton is terrified of whales and uses that fear to torment him relentlessly. He dresses up as Pearl, he stages nightmares, he gaslights Plankton into believing he's constantly being hunted. It all builds to a single moment: Plankton standing in the middle of the street waiting for a bus to hit him. A throwaway suicide gag in a show made for kids. That moment made headlines. Fans were outraged. Critics called it a total misfire, and while it was played for dark humor, it hit a nerve. It showed that SpongeBob wasn't afraid to push past slapstick and step into genuinely uncomfortable territory. But here's the thing. One-Course Meal was cartoonish in its darkness. Are You Happy Now? Didn't rely on grotesque exaggeration. It leaned into real-world sadness, the kind that doesn't shout, it just lingers. And in some ways, that made it way harder to shake off. Are You Happy Now? Aired in season 8, and on the surface, it doesn't look that different from a typical Squidward-centric episode. SpongeBob realizes Squidward doesn't have a happiest memory and sets out to help him make one. Sounds harmless, right? But within minutes, the episode takes a turn. When Squidward is reminded of how little joy he's felt in his life, he falls into a deep, depressive spiral. Not cartoon sad, not my clarinet broke sad, real sad. He isolates himself. He lies in bed for days. His house turns dark and messy. He stops speaking. The background music shifts. The pacing slows down. There's almost no comedy for a full stretch of the episode. And suddenly, we're not watching a quirky kids show. We're watching a character experiencing something painfully close to clinical depression. For many fans, it felt too real, too raw. And for others, it was one of the most honest moments the show ever dared to depict. Here's where Are You Happy Now? Crosses from awkward to emotionally jarring. It doesn't play Squidward's sadness for laughs, not really. Sure, there are a couple of SpongeBob's usual antics trying to lighten the mood, but they don't land. And that's part of the discomfort. For several minutes, the show sits in Squidward's pain. There's a moment that stands out more than any other. Squidward curled up in bed, staring blankly. No movement, no emotion. just silence. And it's eerily accurate, not dramatic, not performative, just numb. That moment felt way too real for some viewers, especially older fans who'd grown up with the show and now found themselves facing mental health struggles of their own. For a character known for sarcasm and bitterness, this stripped-down portrayal hit like a punch. It wasn't the usual Squidward freakout, it was resignation. The kind of sadness you don't even have words for. That's why this episode didn't just feel dark, it felt personal, and maybe, for some, uncomfortably familiar. As if the heavy tone wasn't enough, Are You Happy Now sparked a firestorm online because of one particular scene. During Squidward's depressive episode, there's a blink and you'll miss it shot where the screen cuts away and what follows is silence. For a few seconds, nothing happens. No jokes, no movement, just a quiet black screen. For years, fans speculated this was a scrapped suicide joke. Some even claimed early versions of the episode implied Squidward was going to harm himself off-screen, similar to the tone of One Course Meal, but done more subtly, which made it feel even darker. Nickelodeon never confirmed that theory. It could have been just awkward pacing, but when you're dealing with a character spiraling into isolation, silence carries weight. And when viewers feel like the show is winking at something unspoken, that's enough to raise concern. Whether intentional or not, the scene added to the tension. It blurred the line between comedy and something deeply uncomfortable. And that's what makes the episode still so divisive today. This is where fans split down the middle. Was Are You Happy Now a bold attempt to explore a real issue through a familiar character, or was it just tone deaf? Some viewers argue the episode was trying to be honest. After all, Squidward has always been the realist of the show, the one who feels out of place in a world that's overly cheerful and chaotic. Giving him a storyline about struggling to find joy in life, that tracks. It's relatable, and for adults watching, it hits hard because it reflects something we rarely see in cartoons: the quiet, heavy question of, what if I never feel happy again? On the flip side, others saw it as a misfire. They felt the episode offered no real resolution, no clear message. It just sat in misery until the last-minute payoff. A weak happy memory gag that didn't feel earned. So was it brave or just bleak? That depends on how much credit you think the writers deserve. But either way, it left people talking, which not many late-era SpongeBob episodes can say. Let's give credit where it's due. Are You Happy Now may be uncomfortable, but it accidentally, or not, captured something important about mental health. It doesn't always look like loud breakdowns or over-the-top sobbing. Sometimes it's quiet, paralyzing, slow. The way Squidward retreats into isolation, the way his house becomes dark and cluttered, the lack of energy or emotion, it mirrors real symptoms of depression. That hollow sense of disconnection, that's not exaggerated, that's real. And even if the episode didn't intend to be a mental health PSA, it ended up visualizing what many people experience but don't talk about. There's also something powerful in SpongeBob's reaction. Sure, he's clueless, as usual, but he doesn't give up. He doesn't abandon Squidward, even when he shuts down completely. There's something quietly meaningful about that kind of presence. It may not be perfect support, but it's something. And sometimes that's all someone needs. So even in its flaws, this episode accidentally told a truth that a lot of shows, especially for kids, still avoid. At its best, SpongeBob has always walked a fine line. Silly for kids, clever for adults, packed with absurd humor and just enough heart. But every now and then, it stumbles into something deeper. Are You Happy Now might not be a fan favorite. It might not even be a good episode by classic standards, but it matters because this wasn't just another Squidward gets annoyed story. This was about loneliness, emotional paralysis, the quiet panic of wondering whether you've missed your chance to feel joy at all. And for a show built on optimism and goofiness, that kind of honesty is jarring and maybe even important. Not every cartoon needs to tackle mental health. Not every episode needs to be dark to have value. But when a show like SpongeBob touches on something so human, so universal, even clumsily, it sticks with you. And maybe that's the point. Sometimes the scariest thing isn't a monster or a villain, it's a mirror. And are you happy now? Held that mirror up for just long enough to make us stop laughing and start thinking. If this episode made you feel something, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a deeper dive into the cartoons you thought you knew.